Today on the table I have the Ruger LC9s and the Ruger LC9. I was having troubles finding a price split on these because this is an older firearm. I believe it's actually discontinued, just the Ruger, the LC9. This one has gotten cheaper since we bought this one into the store. It's still kind of expensive, I feel, for what you're actually getting. But it is a nice firearm. If you were to pick either of these two firearms, I still think you'd be doing good. But let's look at the differences. So in the frame, the Ruger LC9 does have an extra pin right there. The Ruger LC9s does not. You go up a little bit higher, and you notice that they have different triggers. To break the firearms apart, they tear down exactly the same. There's a little gate, you have to push it down, lock it out of place. Now you have to line this pin up with this hole. Like this. Now you can flip it upside down and tap on it. That does work. Sometimes it takes a little bit of finesse. Or you can go on the back side with like a staple or a needle, apply slight pressure, and just move the slide back. Pin drops out. Now with the striker fire version, you have to dry fire to tear it apart. Now inside is where you're going to see your real differences. The LC9 uses a hammer, almost like a revolver, that's double action only. So when you pull the trigger, this hammer is going to come back, and then it goes forward. Now your LC9s uses a system more like a Glock, a striker fire system. This is the differences in your slide. This is where your hammer would come up, hit the firing pin. On your striker fire, it works like a pinball machine, pulls your striker back, and then it lets it go. There's also another difference inside. Your LC9 has a non-captured spring, and your LC9s has a captured spring. On the Ruger LC9, the reset, you gotta be careful because it comes up, and you hear that click, so you're like, oh, it's reset, but it's not. You actually have to go way forward, all the way up here before you actually have a reset. The Ruger LC9s, the trigger's already more forward, which is nice because when you're trying to shoot the two firearms, the Ruger LC9, because you have to go so much farther back with the trigger, it kind of screws with your grip, and it can also mess with your shots. But here's your reset on that. Still pretty far forward, but it's much shorter. You'd be able to rattle off more accurate aim shots with the Ruger LC9s in a rapid succession than you would with this, because your fingers just gotta travel so much farther. Trigger break! Making sure my magazine is inserted because this has a magazine disconnect. The Ruger LC9. Pretty long trigger pull. It's still going. Now when I get to this point, I almost have to shift my grip just a little bit to be able to go farther because the trigger's so far back and it snaps. Not a bad break. I mean, it could always be better. There's not really a defined wall either. It almost kind of feels like you're at a wall, but then it can go a little bit farther. The Ruger LC9s Pro. Very light, very short trigger break. I do get a little bit of movement in my front sight. Not too bad. Honestly, the break on both these is very similar as far as movement in the front sight goes. But I do feel I would make better shots with this one, just because coming back so far, once I get to like right here, instead of pulling straight back on my trigger finger, I almost got to do like a push in. And it really screws with my grip. Your Ruger LC9s Pro doesn't have that problem. Very short trigger pull. Here's your wall. Not very defined because you can go quite a bit farther. But the whole time, my finger's moving in a consistent motion. That one, it's too far, I hit right here, and then I'm coming, like, curling it instead of pulling back. The Ruger LC9 does have a loaded flag. It's also got a manual safety. It's very hard to put on. I couldn't see you actually accidentally putting this on. Takes quite a bit of force. Coming off though, quick swipe with your finger. The LC9s, it's just got a cut in the barrel so you can peek in there and see if it's loaded, and it does not have a manual safety. I actually prefer not having the manual safety. It's just a personal preference for me. I also prefer not having the loaded flag. That does have a disadvantage because you couldn't feel and see if it's loaded. But for me, it's just less movable parts on my firearm that could possibly break. The dimensions of the firearms are exactly the same. No variance at all. Your sights, exactly the same. Now the Ruger LC9s, they have improved the options, trying to give the firearm some more sex appeal. You can order these with night sights already on them, different colored frames. You know, just give you a little bit more options. When you purchase either of these two firearms, what you're going to find is you're going to get a trigger lock in your box, a brochure to get some Ruger swag, a Ruger sticker, a Ruger NRA membership card, and then you get a different base plate. So if you want, you can run these firearms with a flush mount base plate, making it a little bit smaller. Now you will lose up your pinky purchase. With your extended base plate, you get a nice purchase for your pinky. You will also get a range flag, and if you get the Ruger LC9s, you do get this stupid little wristband that warns you that there's no mechanical safety and the firearm will fire without a magazine in it. Now the Ruger LC9 will not fire without a magazine in it. It does have a what do they call it? A magazine safety, something like that. Basically, California crap. Ruger LC9s will drop the hammer without a magazine in it. I don't like this setup. One, they've had issues, what was it, the SR45? For whatever reason, the magazine wasn't sitting quite right, so you had to really slam it. Otherwise, it would activate the magazine disconnect. That's what it's called. Not to mention its extra moving parts on my firearm that could potentially fail, could potentially cause me problems. If you have one of these, does that mean you should run off and sell it and get the LC9s? No, this firearm's just fine. If you're functioning with it and everything's going great, why change? Now say I went into a gun shop, such as this one. They had both these on the shelf, such as this one, and they were roughly about $100 split because this one's used and this one's brand new. What one would I pick? You know, I do like cheaper firearms. I'm a sucker for savings, what can I say? But to be honest, I believe the advantages this one has over this one, I shouldn't really call them advantages, the lack of California stuff on this one over just the LC9, I would probably go with the Ruger LC9s Pro. But thank you for watching. Leave in the comments below which one you would pick and why.